Hello again. One of my greatest quirks is that I'm very reluctant to take anybody's word for anything. I always have to go and check things out for myself. This can be very annoying for those around me, not least of all my wife, who finds it very irritating when she says something and I immediately go and check that it is so. But it does make my own life richer and more interesting in many ways. Let me give an example of what I mean. When I was teaching my daughter when she was very little, I decided to explain to her about gravity. This is not a subject about which I know a great deal, but I've got lots of books, so that seemed to be fairly straightforward. I do at least know that heavy things don't fall faster than light things, as a rule. In particular, I know all about Galileo's experiments when he dropped a cannonball and a musket ball from a great height and showed that they landed together. So, after asking my young daughter which she thought would hit the ground first, if I dropped a large rock from the garden at the same time as a small pebble, and hearing her incorrect answer that the rock would land first, I set out to demonstrate the reality that the rock and the pebble would both hit the ground at the same time. This is science in action, no? Recreating a famous experiment and thus making science a real thing to a child who was just 8 years old. What could possibly go wrong? After all, let's face it, this is found in 1,000 science books for kids, and it's part of our cultural heritage. We all know about Galileo dropping those different weights from a height and seeing how they hit the ground together against all expectations. I duly got my daughter to watch as I dropped the rock and the pebble simultaneously from the upstairs window of the house, and she then told me that the rock landed first. Repeat the experiment, rope in my wife to help so that I could check for myself, and lo and behold, every single time the heavy rock landed before the pebble. This, by the way, is the wonder of home education, that one can explore such byways rather than just showing the kid a picture in a book and then passing on to something else. Together, we eventually found the answer to the riddle, but it entailed actually tracking down the writings of Galileo and finding that dropping weights to the ground like that was not at all what he had done. That's all a lot of nonsense. The point here is that not one of those people writing those science books for children had ever actually carried out the experiment. Here's something which is universally accepted, that a large rock and a pebble will fall at the same speed and hit the ground together, just as Galileo showed. It's quite false. We all of us accept this to be true, so much so that nobody ever bothers to see whether it actually is so. Exactly this very thing happens all the time in our everyday lives. We are told things about economics, science, politics, and 100 other subjects, and because we're lazy and too busy with other stuff, we never set out to look into the matter properly, but just take the word of experts. Often we read something about astronomy or climate change or even immigration that we can actually investigate and sit down and do a few sums to check. We don't bother though, and we'd rather just take at face value what we are told. This is disastrous. I've said before, and been accused of false modesty, that I have only an average IQ. This is not my being modest at all. It's no more than the literal truth. I'm not some kind of brain box. What I do have, though, is an insatiable curiosity to find stuff out. This is why when I pass a guy digging up the road, I often stop and ask what he's doing and why, and about how he uses a pneumatic drill, the difficulties in finding pipes or wires, all sorts of things. I want to know what's going on. It is, of course, this same reluctance to take other people's words for things which has led to my writing books, which I have done on various aspects of history, which seem to me to have been overlooked or forgotten or grossly distorted. In short, I may not be overburdened with brain power, but I make up for any deficiency in that field by a burning desire to find out what is really going on, as opposed to what our masters tell us is going on. I thought it worth talking about this because sometimes my critics ask why I seem obsessed with immigration. The answer is that nothing about the business adds up correctly. And the harder one looks into it, the more obvious does it become that there is something fishy about the standard narrative. Just like those wonderful pictures of Galileo dropping stuff from the top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, there is something wrong with the story we are being told. And I simply want to know what it is.